10-year-old Katie Beers is being held and horrifically abused in an underground coffin-sized dungeon. Kidnapped by family friend John Esposito. She's several days into this terrifying ordeal, freezing cold conditions, no working toilet, little food or light, often restrained by a chain around her neck. It's the stuff of horror films.
I was raped several times by Esposito. If I didn't do what he had asked me to do, he would hit me.
As the days wore on, cops worked feverishly to find Katie. They were at Esposito's main house around the clock, clueless to her conditions. Cops were close, but not close enough.
He insisted through his attorneys that the residence team leave the unattached garage where he was in and actually stay in the front main house.
Esposito knew what he was doing. The dungeon was directly below the unattached garage. Katie's hope of being rescued would come and go just like the cops.
And then they would come back, and the hope would come back. And how did you learn to cope with that?
I would hear other people upstairs, and then it would die down when Esposito came down. I was like, oh, okay, well, another day, I guess.
But the walls were starting to close in on Esposito.
We were ramping up the pressure on him, following him wherever he went, looking to do polygraphs on all his family members.
Not giving up, Katie was working on Esposito too, manipulating him, trying to break him down.
I would ask John different questions. So I was trying to get him to think about the long term of him kidnapping me.
Around 14 days in, Katie devised a clever strategy.
I told him that I wasn't feeling well.
Very fascinating the way she was able to play him along. She wasn't really sick. I think this truly alarmed him.
With police closing in and the possibility of Katie dying, on day 17, John Esposito cracked.
He went to his attorneys and told them that he knew where Katie was. He had her all the time.
Esposito finally led detectives to Katie in the sadistic underground dungeon.
I was scared to death because he never came down that early in the day. Then I heard other voices with him, and I remember them saying, "We're the police, you're safe now."
Katie stayed frozen, unable to move, not trusting what they said. Then she realised it was really over.
I hightailed it through the tunnel as fast as I could.
Detectives feared they would see a broken little girl. Instead,
we were amazed. You see a 9-year-old look like she just come back from a trip to the movies. She's sitting in the sofa, bubbly, upbeat, and we just knew from that moment on that she was going to be a survivor.
But it took Katie a long time to believe she was truly safe.
The true realization for me that I was being rescued was when I went through the gates off of the property.
And what did that feel like?
I was scared to death because there was media everywhere. The next day, went to live with my foster family, and I think that that was when I kind of felt the sigh of relief, like, wow, it's over. That part is over.
Esposito was taken into custody, the bunker was documented and then excavated.
Everyone wanted to know how we didn't find her. I'm thinking, how do we defend this? But it was easy to defend because when anyone saw a video of what he had done and what he had created and the steps that you had to take to get down into this dungeon, everyone understood how you would not find it.
Among the items in the dungeon full of evidence, cops found a voice-activated recorder.
It was documenting some of her screams for help. And you hear her screaming and banging, "I missed my birthday. John, take me back, take me back." And it's just heart-wrenching and what this poor girl had to endure.
You've been an investigator for 39 years, almost 4 decades. How chilling were these recordings?
These recordings are the most chilling, most compelling tapes that you want to hear. We had homicide detectives who heard these audio recordings and broke down in tears.
What does survival mean to you now when you look back on all that you've been through?
Persevering, being able to not let your past hold you down.
But a resilient Katie soon began the process of healing. Therapist Mary Bromley helped Katie in the months and years that followed, learning how to deal not only with the kidnapping, but with the sexual, emotional and physical abuse she endured 8 years before at the hands of Sal Ingaliri.
What kind of condition, what kind of state of mind was Katie in when she came to you?
She had spent her whole life trying to please adults. So she was upbeat in a way that I knew was just a defense mechanism.
In the early sessions, Mary says she used art and play therapy to help Katie break through the barriers.
This one is actually the first painting that I had done of the dungeon.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
This is where they kept you, where he kept you and where you were forced to sleep.
Those are the handcuffs and that was the chain around my neck.
Mary says there are two kinds of sexual offenders, and Sal Ingaliri was the scarier of the two.
He was a sadistic offender.
John Esposito was the other.
He was a fixated offender. The fixated offender doesn't want to kill the child. So she was much more afraid of Sal Ingaliri than she was of Esposito.
Reportedly, John Esposito thought he was saving Katie from what was happening at home with Sal and Linda.
Did she beg you to let her go?
Yes, after 4 or 5 days.
Thankfully, Katie wouldn't have to face Esposito in court. He pled guilty to kidnapping and was given 15 years to life. But she would have to face Sal Ingaliri.
I feel sorry that Bill Catherine Beers had to pick to stand and testify, but this was my only alternative to try to clear my name.
Ingaliri was found guilty of sexually abusing Katie and sentenced to 12 years. Both Sal Ingaliri and John Esposito have since died in prison. Neither Katie's biological mother, Marilyn, nor her godmother, Linda, were ever charged with any crime.
She was wise beyond her years.
She did what she had to do to survive. And I think her Cinderella-like background, the sexual abuse that she endured, prepared her for the event. She's resilient.
And the friendship between Katie and Chief Varone is something Katie very much cherishes.
For 17 days, I was his life. I mean, he ate, slept, and breathed my case in. He was one of the ones that just did not give up. He was the one that knew that John Esposito had me, and I'm grateful of the relationship that I have with him.
Years later, Katie sat down to write her memoir, Buried Memories.
I've heard you say in the book that this kidnapping in many ways you believe actually helped save your life. What do you mean by that?
Because the first 10 years of my life were horrible. If it hadn't been for the abduction, I don't think I would have ever gotten out of the cycle of abuse that I was in with Sal and Linda.
Today, Katie is a wife and mother to two beautiful children.
My kids, they are the most important things in my life. Everything is to ensure that they can have a better life and that they grow up knowing that they're loved.
It would be easy for a little girl to emerge from that dungeon and spend the rest of her life seeing only darkness. That's not the way you look at things.
Absolutely not. I always try to see the good in everything, the good in people, the good in situations, everything.
For all the evil we see in Esposito, and there is so much of it, Katie really does represent the other extreme. She now works with the National Centre for Missing and Exploited Children. She wants to do more of that. And while researching her book, Katie reveals she actually spoke with Esposito in prison. Now, he told her in part, "I know I'm guilty of my crime, but I believe I've been punished enough. I mean, I didn't kill anyone, and when I started my crime, I really thought it would be good for both of us."